theyeshiva.net.
So the summation of Perek Gimel and Perek Daled is that one cannot reach and experience the ultimate of Torah, which is the Yireh G'dayla, the Yireh Law, the higher Yireh, which comes from the fact that the neshama, the mazel of the neshama, experiences the Ein Sof, the infinity, Sof of Kol Almin, unless the person brings forth first the lower level of Yireh, Yireh Tata, which represents the Soim Tasim Alecha Melech, the commitment to the relationship, the commitment to Kiyum HaMitzvahs B'Poel Mamish, just like the Kiddushin is the prerequisite for the Nisuyin. First you have an external connection, but it's the framework, it's the commitment, it's the ring that demonstrates a powerful, potent relationship that then allows for a yichud pnimi, for an internalized, intimate relationship to blossom and develop within a safe environment that will not be breached, will not be violated, will not be abused. And that's why we say katshenu b'mitzvaysecha and then v'sein chalkenu b'seiresecha. Kiddushin happens through mitzvahs, and bia, intimacy, happens through understanding of Torah. So there is imein yira ein chachma. Without yira, yira tata, there will not be chachma. This is the yira of Kabbalah's al mitzvahs. And then there is imein chachma ein yira. Without chachmas ha-Torah, there will not be the higher yira law. By Matan Torah, the Jewish people experienced the Ein Sof without yira tata because they didn't have mitzvahs yet. But that was a gift. But they understood then that for generations, for eternity, the way this will be able to be experienced is through the system of Nasa v'Nishma. Meaning the Seder Avodah has to be first Nasa, which is Yireh Tata, and then Nishma, which is Torah, which is the prerequisite to Yireh Ilah. And that's the Nasa that comes before the Nishma. And that's why by Kriya Shema, Chazal say, you can't have Parsha Rishona without Parsha Shniya. Parsha Rishona is Torah, Rishinantam Levanecha. Parsha Shniya is mitzvahs. Parsha Rishona is like Yireh Ilah, Parsha Shniya is Yireh Tata. So just to clarify, Parsha Rishona, you would say, so Parsha Rishona should come second because you first need Nasa. But the Nekudah is that the Nekudah of Kriya Shema is Yireh Ilah. That's why you start off with Parsha Rishona. But we're emphasizing that you cannot just have Yireh Ilah. There's going to have to be an element of Yireh Tata. So there has to be also Kabbalah Sal Mitzvahs, even though in Kriya Shema Taka comes second. But the point is that Kriya Shema, the focus is Yireh Ilah. But nonetheless, there's no Yireh Ilah if it's divorced from Yireh Tata, if it's divorced from mitzvahs. Because you don't have the environment in which this Yireh Ilah can be experienced.
In davening you go from the lower to the higher. How come by Shema you go from the higher?
Because no, in previous davening, the previous parts of davening apparently are connected to Yireh Tata. But even in Kriya Shema itself, where you're already focused on Yireh Ilah, even there Chazal tell us that you have to have Parsha Rishona together with Parsha Shniya. There's a word from the Kotzker Rebbe. It's not mamish the same word, but it's reminiscent of it in some ways. He says, we say in Kriya Shema, V'hoyu advarim eila shenoichim mitzav chayim al levavcha. Later also, V'samtem es dvarai eila al levavcha. Asks the Kotzker L'choyre, it should have said, place these words in your heart, not on your heart, right? I'll tell you, I want these words should go into your heart. They should enter your heart. They shouldn't sit on your heart. So he answers as follows. He says, most days, the human heart is not open. There's no way that these words are penetrating your heart. They are not entering into your heart. The heart is plugged, closed, sealed. The question is with 7 locks, with 100 locks, with a thick security lock that nobody is going to break, or with maybe a little bit of an easier lock to break through. But a lock there is. So all Hashem asks of the person is, you pile up the words on top of your heart. He says, so on top of your heart is going to be a huge mountain of words. One day your heart is going to open up. If there was something there before, it will all go right into your heart. If there was nothing there, the heart will open up. The heart will be open. but there will be nothing to enter into the heart because you did not do the prep work before. So in many ways, one cannot expect,
Can you connect the two luchos to that? The first ones where the words were in this.
He means mind here, right?
in other words, to really emotionally penetrate the
He's not talking about
person.
He's talking about your moya, right?
Well, the mayach, the way it affects emotions.
Right.
There's mayach cerebral, just, scholastic, a
Right.
computer type of understanding. Levavcha, he means that you emote from it. It excites you. It moves you. You're enthusiastic about you. So he says, the kavanah is not always to emote. But sometimes when you process real information, it sits there. And when that day will come and you will open up, it will all settle in. But if you don't have anything there, your heart will open up. You'll get very emotional. You'll cry. You'll weep. You'll feel this cosmic oneness or spiritual ecstasy. But ultimately, there will be nothing tangible that lasts after the heart closes up. The heart, let's say, opens up for an hour. Say for a day, if your mom is lucky. It closes back up. What's left? Nothing. It was like a moment, you feel people have spiritual moments of meditation, of transcendence. These are things that people have, especially sensitive people, spiritual people. But what are you going to fill it with? You need something to fill it with. In many ways, I would say that's Kiddushin and Nisuyin. Kiddushin is not yet Yichud Pnimi, but it's the framework. It's the commitment that allows that when you're open and when you allow yourself to experience the other person, it will be able to work. Because there is a loyalty, there's a trust, there's a commitment. But without it, people sometimes are capable of emotional intimacy, but it's very hard to create an everlasting commitment, a binyan adayam, because it comes and it goes. It comes and it goes. The second column on 32. Liyas Gili Ratsanalian Baruch Malubish Bechach Mela Lamaila. Niseder Ishtalshlis Veseder Kviyas Avoida. Vayedaber Svira Sa'omer Zayin Shavuos Tisperlach Mehachel Chermes Bakama. Even though the Hizgalus of Matan Torah was as a gift, as he said, Isarusa de Leila, not according to the regular Seder Avoida, nonetheless there was still some preparation. What was the preparation? The Svira Sa'omer, that the Jewish people counted. It's true, there was no mitzvah of Svira Sa'omer then, but the 7 weeks, actually, as the Ran famously says, that they, the end of Pesachim, that they actually counted, they anticipated the days. So the 7 weeks, that was the preparation. Zayin Shavuos Tisperlach Mehachel Chermes Bakama, you should count 7 days. 7 weeks. The concept of Sfira Saimeru, Kepirush Sfira Miloshin Ha'ara. The word Sfira means a count, but it also comes from the word sapphire. A ray, a light, a glow. Like Evan Sapir, a sapphire stone. It's a uniquely glowing diamond. So Sfira Saimer means not only the count of the Aimer, but the shining, the glow. V'hainu ha'aris v'amshachas el ha'aimer. Sfira Saimer means you bring in light. You create a flow of energy to the Omer. What's the Omer? Omer was a measurement of flour which came in as sa'orim from barley, which is Meichel Behema. Chazal tell us, the Mishnah in Saita and Gemara in Pesachim in the beginning, that Chittim is Meichel Adam and sa'orim, barley, is animal fodder. So Sfira Sa'omer means to bring light to the Omer. What does it mean to the Omer? To Meichel Behema. Dahainu, Chiyus hanefesh abahamas bezayin midas ativius hamaspashtas mimenu. The oimer, which comes from barley, which is the food of the animal from which she lives, represents the life of the animal soul, which are her natural midas, her natural inclinations. Because food gives us the nutrients from which we create which enter into our bloodstream. Ki adam hu nefesh. That's how we live. So the chiyus of the nefesh abahamas is represented by its food. And this is expressed in her 7 natural midas, her 7 natural emotions that extend from her, that express her. So the avoid of Sfira Sa'omer is Sfira, to bring light into the life of the animal soul, into all of her 7 midas. One ought to illuminate them, to light them up, and to refine them. Zachechan is from the word zichuch, zach, like Shem and Zayah zach. clear, refinement, zichuch, lezachech, shetiyena nichlalas b'midas dekdusha, that they should be included. In other words, they should become aligned with the holy midas, like we say in the pasuk in Divrei Hayamim Lecha, Hashem Agdula v'Agvura v'Atiferes v'Netzach v'Hoid, so that the midas tivius and the nefesh habahamis should become aligned with the midas of holiness. B'bchinas iskafia v'ishapcha, either in the model of iskafia or in the model of ishapcha. Iskafia would mean subjugation. Ishapcha would mean transformation, which are two models in Avodas Hashem. Sometimes you subdue a midah, and sometimes you actually reorient it. You redefine it. You harness it in a very positive direction. You don't subdue it. Subdue it means you say no to it. You say, this is not for me at the moment. I understand you feel this way, but it's not where we're going. Ishapcha is already a higher mode where you transform it. In other words, you take it and you reorient it into the positive. You recognize its positive skills, its positive opportunities, and you transform it, you change it. So that's, and both models exist constantly in Avodas Hashem. Sometimes we're called on to do iskafia, and sometimes we're called on to do ishapcha. Iskafia comes from the word lichfois, koifen oisai, right? Koifen, compel, force, subdue. Ishapcha comes from the word v'napechu, to transform, lahapoich, lahapech. V'hainu adei amshachas hayoim yoim. The zichuch of the midas happens, that they themselves are transformed. That's why we say Hayoim Yoim Echad Loimer, Hayoim Yom Sheni. Yoim represents revelation. The pasuk says in Bereshis, Vayikra Elokim La'or Yoim. Hashem defined the light as the day. In other words, day represents light. Shahu, essentially, this is Hamshachas Chachmei La Baruchu. In order to illuminate the Nefesh HaBahamis' midas, it's to bring forth Chachma Ilah, Hashem's wisdom. Shehu Oir v'zera zarua hamahapchim chuli u'ma'at Oir doicha harbe choshech. This is a light. A little light expels a lot of darkness. This light of Chachma is called Oir v'zera zarua. It's the light and the zera zarua, the seed that's planted in the kedusha of the nefesh halikis, which can then transform the animal soul. In other words, the light that's planted, that's sown, zarua, in the godly soul can transform the koyach hatainug of the nefesh habahamis. V'zel mehachil chermeis bakama. That's why the pasuk says you should start counting from when the sickle hits the stalk. Chermeis is the sickle, kama is the stalk of grain. You harvest the grain with a sickle, the barley, and then you start counting the omer, because they would harvest it the mitzvah, the first night of Pesach, meaning Tazayin Nisan that night, and the next morning they would offer it in the Beis Hamikdash, and we would start counting. The second day of Pesach, we start counting. Chermes is miloshen hachrim tachrime. Chermes means a sickle which cuts down the harvest. From the word, why is a chermes called a sickle? From the word hachrim, cherim. Hachrim tachrim means to destroy them, because the sickle cuts down the grain. Kama, Hein hamidas shein kamais v'gam nitzaves hal amdan b'maimed kiyum v'chazak b'takfon b'tivon kiltel daisan. Kama, which literally means the standing stalks of grain, also represents the midas, because the midas stand and they're firm with a tremendous maimed. They're very powerful and firm, and if you don't affect them the way they are in their nature, they seem unchangeable. They seem mighty. Shetzarich lahanef aleim charmes. A person needs to lift up a sickle. The midas are not as etched in stone as they may seem. One can take a sickle and elevate them, literally remove them from their soil, and elevate them and sublimate them, that they should become part of the midas of kedusha. So a person's midas, although we have very strong emotions, so at face value, the emotion is a kama. It stands erect, and one doesn't feel that they can change it, they can reorient it, they could refine it, they could subdue it. Because when we have an emotion, it sometimes becomes mentally overwhelming, and there's nothing else outside of the emotion, because we don't see it in the context of a larger picture. The emotion completely takes us over. You know that, right? You sometimes have an emotion, you're hurt. Somebody tells you something, and let's say your spouse or somebody else close to you says to you something, and you get this overwhelming emotion of hurt or of anger, or frustration, or of despair, or whatever it is, hatred, animosity, all the midos that the natural animal soul experiences. So what does one do? Don't just surrender to it and succumb to it. You have to approach it with a sickle. What does it mean, approach it with a sickle? Approach it with a sickle means you have to be able to look what's behind the midah. You have to be able to see what underlies the midah. And then ultimately, you could learn how to transform it. Or sometimes you just have to learn to ignore it. That's called iskafia, ishapcha. Iskafia means you ignore it. Ishapcha means you transform it. Sometimes you're not capable of transforming it. But it doesn't mean you have to embrace it and sanctify it. It doesn't mean you have to start breaking windows or hollering or screaming or quitting just because you had an emotion. Iskafia would mean, now I ignore. Ishapcha would mean you go into it and you ultimately realize that it's not evil essentially. There's a certain energy that it is feeding off upon, and if you could trace it back to its source, that's the oir v'zera zarua. If you can go back to the seed of your emotion, if you can go back to the seed, in other words, where it comes from, what its original source, you may find that it's actually coming from a very innocent and positive space, and therefore, actually, in the right context and with the right help, that very emotion could become a catalyst and a springboard for a positive relationship. As those who work on themselves intensely know very well from their own lives.
So how do you differentiate between an emotion and a midah? Like a person's hardwired with a particular midah. A person is hardwired in a certain way. He's
right.
more cerebral. He's more intuitive.
Right.
That midah is not subject to this.
Right. We're not talking about it to bring. Yeah. In other words, here we're talking about that the nefesh habaham. Every person has an animal soul, and the animal soul, like an animal, functions basically with 7 midos: chesed, gvura, tiferes, netzach, chod, yesod, and malchus. Sfiras ha'omer is the first thing is you take a sickle to the grain and you harvest it. That's the beginning of the avodah. Before counting is ksiras ha'omer. What does this represent psychologically in a person's life? We all have our personalities that are erect. They're like stalks of grain. Now when you look at the stalks of grain, they look very impressive, but of course a wind sways them back and forth. But they still remain in one space. So sometimes a person has certain emotions and they never change. They always get upset about the same things, by the same people, by the same situations. They're always jealous from the same people, from the same situations. They're full of annoyance or hate or frustration or animosity or envy or different forms of jealousy. They're always suffering from insecurity or lack of confidence, or whatever it is. Issues of selfishness or narcissism. There's chesed, there's gvura, there's tiferes. Chesed means they have, excessive love, no boundaries. Gvura is very harsh, very selfish, no ability to connect, and so on and so forth. Tiferes is manipulative. Netzach is ambition with no boundaries. Hoid is they feel like a shmata. I'm talking about emotions of the animal soul that are not essentially negative, but they could be harnessed and they could be expressed in very destructive ways. So the worst thing is not to take a sickle. In other words, to believe that this is who you are and this is who you're destined to be, and you just have to make peace with it. So the idea of ksiras ha'omer is that you take the chemes from the word hachrim tachrimim, and you bring them to the kama, and you know that there is a possibility to affect these midas. Either iskafia means they don't have to take over your life, or ishapcha, they can even be transformed into something very positive and powerful. Because each midah comes from a core. The animal is not evil by nature, in essence. It may be cute. It's just an animal. So if it's not trained, if your dog is not trained, it can become a monster. As everybody knows, if an animal is not trained, it could take over your whole life. It decides that it's the master, and so on and so forth. So the nefesh habahamis needs to be educated and disciplined and refined, and its midas have to be uplifted.
Ignore it, how can it become good?
Well, in order to make it good, you first have to ignore it, because if there's no ignoring it, it could just take over a life. Ignoring it is a big avoid. Ignoring it is not repression. Ignoring it means I choose not to allow this to become the defining model of who I am. Ignoring a certain midah means, let's say, as I gave you once an example, if you're driving in your car and you're sitting by your steering wheel, and there's a voice in the back seat who says, take the red light, take the red light, take the red light. Okay, do you have to listen to the voice? No, you tell him, thank you, but no thank you. There's a truck coming, and you thank God that you're sitting at the steering wheel and not him. But now I have a question. What if that voice is in you? There's a voice in you. Take the red light, take the red light. What do you have to do? What you have to do is you have to say, you know what? That voice is not going to be given the steering wheel. That voice is going to be quarantined. It's going to be defined as a voice. So this is the story of life. We have voices all day. One voice says, she hates me. He hates me. This will never happen. We don't realize what those voices are because we think we are our voices. It takes a lot of work to distinguish between you and your voices. You are not your voices. You are not your thoughts. The thought that this is a terrible marriage is a thought. Doesn't mean it's a terrible marriage. It's a thought that it's a terrible marriage. Remember that. Thoughts are not all of reality. Thoughts are thoughts. Huh?
Sometimes there's a real voice for someone. You get hurt or you get...
Fine, but it's outside of you. But my point is even a voice inside of you is outside of you. What do I mean outside of you? It's not the whole picture. It's not the whole self. If I learn to do this and I learn to train myself this way, I can identify if I have a deep issue with insecurity or a deep issue with I'm not comfortable with myself. So whenever somebody criticizes me, my original thought is they're horrible, they're evil. I can't be in their presence. Really what I'm saying is not that they're evil and I can't be in their presence. I feel so much pain because their words triggered my sense of inadequacy. You understand? But I don't say that because my Nefesh HaBahamis has not been trained to be open to that truth. Because it's hard, it's embarrassing. All I'm trained to do is, he's horrible, I want to cut off every relationship. How is that going to help? It's just putting a Band-Aid. A much more honest identification is, I am really hurt. Now, why am I hurt? It's by what he said. It's by what I heard him say. But why did I hear him say this? That happens to do completely with me. It has to do with my own sense of inadequacy. So what if I could go and confront that? What if I feel you can go to imagine you're close to this person, you can tell this person, you know, I have this and this issue, and what you said triggered it. So now what you're actually doing is, this very emotion becomes a catalyst and a springboard for tremendous growth. And it really turns out that the emotion is coming from your innocence, your vulnerability. You want to have value. Now, having value is not an evil thing. So the emotion of hate, I'm going to ostracize you, I'm cutting you out of my life because you always say things that destroy me. And suddenly you see, no, you were just an innocent child asking to have significance and value. If you go through this process, this is called as hapcha, because the next time, or maybe the next month or the next year, this emotion will be experienced very differently. The same emotion, but it was transformed. Why? Because you went back to the seed. You went back to the seed. You went back to the source of it. You look at a big tree. It's a big monster, but really it comes from a very pure, innocent seed. And the seed is a whole different picture. That's the power of ishapcha. But that's a very big avodah. First you have to start with iskafia. Iskafia means this is coming, this emotion is coming from a lower part of myself, and I don't want him to have the steering wheel. That's it. I'm not transforming the emotion, I'm just identifying which part of me is speaking, and do I want that part to rule my life? If I have an addiction, and the addiction has powerful emotions, this is exactly what I need right now. I have nothing else in my world. I cannot get rid of the addiction at the moment. I can't do a sapcha right now. Maybe many years, and even then you got to be very careful. Real people in recovery will always identify themselves as addicts. I remember I was once at a Shabbaton for recovery. So somebody got up and he said, welcome, what do they say? I am so-and-so, and I'm part of the program. And everybody applauds. So he's been sober for 41 years. 41 years. I went over to Master and I said, you called yourself an addict. You said, I am an addict for this and this. But you're sober 41 years. I'll never forget what he said, Rabbi Jacobson, the day I stop calling myself an addict, I will become an addict. The day I stop calling myself an addict, in other words, the day I take my recovery for granted, I'm a healthy person, that's the day I will become an addict. Why? Because I will ignore the devil. I have to tell myself every day that there's a devil in me that's about to destroy me, and I stand with a gun. The moment I put down my gun, I will die. I will be defeated. Now that's a very, very mature and genuine observation in life. It's tragic, but it's also noble. It's heroic. It's heroic. In Tanya, the Baal Tanya says in Perikut Gimel, Chazal say in Masechta Nida, Afilu kol olam kulei omrim lecha tzadik ata, heyei beinecha karosha. So he says, why? This is not a good thing for self-confidence, right? We know if Tati, Mami, your teachers, your Rosh Hashiva, your Rebbe, your Mashgiach says, you're a wonderful bacher, you look in the mirror and you say, no, I'm horrible, I'm evil. It's not a good thing. So he says something beautiful. He says, doesn't say Hayei beinecha rasha. He says Hayei beinecha karasha. And he explains that a person should always remember that he has a condition. Never take your behavior for granted and believe that you're essentially liberated from all negative voices and influences in you. Because the moment that happens, your taka going to fall. Not that you should look at yourself as a bad person. You should understand that you're capable of crossing the red line at any minute. I once told a Maisa at one of the Munah Shiurim. It's a very powerful story, especially with some recent news that was a lot disturbing. There was I heard this from a Paisik in Eretz Yisrael, Farkash. So there was a Polish Rebbe. No, Rebbe was like a tzaddik in Poland, a Likkutei Yid. He was a holy man, and he was a widower. So they had a bacher who stayed with him, so he shouldn't be alone. He also had a maid, a shiksa, a Polish non-Jewish woman who worked in the house. She was an elderly woman in her 70s. One night, it was winter in Poland, the bacher tells the Rebbe, his Rebbe, he has to go do something for 20 minutes, and he'll be right back. So he leaves the house. He comes back 20 minutes later, and this man, who's 90 years old, a Rebbe in Poland, is standing outside. And it's freezing. It's a winter night in Poland. And the poor man, he has a coat, but it's a thin coat, and he's trembling. So he goes over to, they go into the house. He apologizes. He says, I didn't know you're going to come out, stay outside. I'm so sorry. I would have not left. Why'd you stay outside? He says, it's yichud. There's the shiks is in the house. It's yichud. I'm not allowed to be in the house. So he says, Rebbe, let's face it. You are 90 years old. She is 75 years old. And let's face it, she's not Esther Hamalka. She's an old woman and not very, beautiful physically. What's the chshasher? So he looks at him and he said, Bachenel. In Yiddish he says, Mit mein Yetzahara, in 5 minut ver ich jung und sie schön. With my Yetzahara, in 5 minutes I become young and she becomes beautiful. Now I think that's a beautiful story. The reason it's a beautiful story is because he was aware of human nature. The Gemara says, Eina petrupus la'arayas. The moment you start believing you're liberated, you sometimes become the greatest slave. That's why you always have to have this model of iskafia, always. There's always the ability to say there's a voice, but you know what? I'm choosing not to follow it. It's not the reflection of the self.
So ignoring is a good thing?
Ignoring is a good thing. Repressing is not a good thing. There's a difference between ignoring and repressing. Separating, not ignoring, separating. Very good. What we call boirer. Boirer is a very good thing. It's one of the malachas in the Mishkan. Not for Shabbos, but all week you have to do boirer. Boirer means separating. This is psoilus and this is oichel. Nothing wrong. You have a mixture, great. That's why you have a mind to be boirer. Shabbos boirer is aser. But the middle of the week, boirer is a chiyuv. That's what boirer is. In fact, the body is doing boirer most of the day and most of the night. What do you think your body is doing? We eat all the junk in the world, and then the body is busy doing boirer. Our poor bodies have to constantly respond to our poor choices. The body's always, okay, this is good, this is going to the Beis HaKisei. But emotionally, we're always doing boirer. Iskafi is boirer. And it's a very deep avodah. To be able to say this is psilus, and therefore it's not me, or it's me, but it's not all of me, and it's not who I want to be because it's not my essence, it's a lower me, it's my nefesh habahamis, that's boirer. That's a very deep avodah. And you always have to have that. Ishapcha is, I actually get into the emotion, I trace it back to its original source. I come to realize that its manifestation may be negative, but its core is not negative, and therefore I can actually reorient it and transform it. You typhus? So Kirasha means, he says, like a Beinani. In other words, that it's not that he's a Rasha. He may not be a Rasha. He may be a tzaddik, actually. But Karasha means that he shouldn't think that he's completely liberated from the voices in him that any moment can turn him into a Rasha. This is why I said the story about the addict. The moment he says, I'm not an addict, in other words, I'm free. We tell a Nazir, the Gemara says, you tell a Nazir, schar, schar, l'karma loy sikrav. Don't go near the vineyard. Why? It's a helikiyid. Because mitayet in 5 minutes. In 5 minutes. Now, real Jews know this very well about themselves. They know that in 5 minutes everything changes. He's on top of the world. On top of the world, and tomorrow he's on bottom of the world. That's how it is. Why? Because you don't stand guard every minute to what's going on inside. You can lose everything. And this is what happens. It happens. No person is immune to these situations. This is the role of iskafia, to choose. And then there's ishapcha. You don't have to choose. You actually transform. In a way, you embrace it. You embrace it. Are we always capable of ishapcha? No. There's times for iskafia. There's times for ishapcha. It's the difference of Yitzias Mitzrayim and La'asid Lava. Yitzias Mitzrayim was kiborach ha'am. They ran away. Why'd they run away? Because it was part of them. La'asid Lava, it says, Loi b'chipazin telechu. Ki im b'shuva v'nachas tivasheyon. You won't have to run, because you don't have to run. Yitzias Mitzrayim, they had to run because they had to run from themselves. You could take a Jew out of Mitzrayim. You can't take Mitzrayim out of the Jew, right? They say you could take the Jews out of Russia. You can't take Russia out of the Jews. You could take Golus. You could take a Jew out of Golus. You could take Mitzrayim. You could take a Jew out of Mitzrayim, but Mitzrayim is inside, so you have to run. You're always running. You're running from yourself, from a part of yourself. La'asid Lavim, there'll be transformation. So it says, Loi b'chipazin telechem, v'loi b'menusa telechem. Ki b'shuv, and yet, maskirin Yitzias Mitzrayim l'maisa Mashiach. Even when Mashiach comes, that we say in the Haggadah, Yemei chayecha olam hazeh kol yemei chayecha l'havi l'maisa Mashiach. What's the chiddush? The chiddush is that even when the time of ishapcha, which is la'asid lavai, we're still going to recall the moments of iskafia, because iskafia has a tremendous nobility to it, has a tremendous majesty to it. It has something that ishapcha doesn't have. Ishapcha, in a way, is much harder, but it means you're a transformed person. Iskafia has something that ishapcha doesn't have, and that is that within your state of unholiness, you're still holy. And that's a very powerful idea. It's like the difference of Shabbos and weekdays. Shabbos, there's no boirer. Weekdays, within a state of boirer, within a state of psilus, you still are an Oved Hashem. In other words, you bring godliness even to a place of unholiness, which has a unique majesty all of its own. So, v'hine kol hazayin shavuos, all the 7 weeks, him b'bchinis milchama shal nefesh shal lekis, im hayetzer hara v'nefesh habahamis liyas eskafia v'eshapcha, u'mebchinis ishtalshalus mechachma olamata, ki bechachma is bariru. The Hachana of Matan Torah is the 7 weeks of Sfiras Haimer, is the war of the Nefesh HaLekis with the Yetzer Hara and the Nefesh HaBahamis. There's the Yetzer Hara, the negative inclination, and the animal soul, to create both Iskafia and Ishapcha. Iskafia means, as explained, the ability to separate, the ability to subdue, and Ishapcha is to transform. And all of this comes, Mebchinas Ishtalshalus Mechachim Olamata Ki Bechachim is Bariru. The power to elevate and refine the animal soul always comes from Chachma. The Zohar says, B'chachma is bariru. All boirer, all birur, the word boirer, select, clarify, separate, comes from Chachma. And And this is all Mebchinas Ishtalshalos, meaning the evolution of the divine energy, which always begins with Chachma and then goes down, Bina, Chesed, Kvura, Tiferes, etc. So this is all from Hishtalshalos, from Chachma and below, because the Biru starts from Chachma. After the end of the war. A person finished and was victorious over all the enemies, meaning the 7 natural midos, to conquer them and to subdue them, then automatically and on its own, the divine will gets revealed. That will, which is beyond Hishtalshalos, beyond the evolution of the world, that which encompasses and transcends all the worlds, that equates the higher and the lower. So in other words, after the Avodah, today, generally the system is Nasa v'Nishma, first Nasa, then Nishma, Yirei Tata, then Yirei Lo. Even by Matan Torah, where it started off with Yirei Lo, because there were no mitzvahs, they still prepared themselves 7 weeks, which the 7 weeks is dealing with the midos, all the 7 midos of the animal soul, Svartam Lacha, to make them glow, Svartam from the word sapphire, to make them glow. Usfiras ha'omer, which is you bring in light to your animal food, to the chiyus of your animal, you shine light on the life force of your animal soul. That's what Sfiras ha'omer means. It's a beautiful pirush. Sfira, you shine a light on the omer, on the food of your animal, meaning omer is Michael Behem, it's barley. On the energy of your animal, you shine a light and you illuminate it, you elevate it, you sublimate it, either through a skafia, through a sapcha. When this is done, so then came Matan Torah. What's Matan Torah? The ability to be able to experience the divine will, which is completely beyond any structure and restriction relatable to the world. It's Shava, Mashva, Katan, V'Gadol. So first he starts off with the birur, all the way of all the midos, which comes from Chachma, and then automatically you have the gilui of Soiv Kalam, and once a person experiences the revelation of Soiv, there's no war anymore. Kinasa hakoil echad, because everything is one. And from a Rishus HaRabim, everything becomes a Rishus HaYachid for God's unity. We learned about the 4 Rishuyas of Shabbos, spiritually speaking. Atzilus is Rishus HaYachid, and then you have Makkah P'tur, you have Carmelis, you have Rishus HaRabim, which is this world. You have different Rishuyas, but in the ultimate place of Soiv Kalam, and then you have the ultimate Rishus HaYachid. All the multiplicity becomes one private domain which represents God's unity, so there's no war anymore. There's no milchama. A battle exists only when there's 2 forces that compete with each other. But well, down here is a Rishus HaRabim, so when you're going up from here, you start off with Rabim, everything is fragmented, everybody's on their own, and then the higher, the closer you get to the core, the more oneness there is. So in this place, there's absolutely no milchama because there's no opposition. The whole milchama exists only when a person does not feel the presence of Hashem in them. The moment a person feels the presence of Hashem in them, then there's no battle between the 2 souls. There's no battle between these midas and those midas. Because one could clearly see the Soiv of Kalalman, which is Shava, Mashva, Katan, V'Gadol. So then there's oneness and harmony that pervades everything. So the multiplicity is Rishus HaRabim, fragmentation. Rishus HaYachid is oneness. When a person reaches a space where they could see the divine perspective, the Soiv of Kalalman, the divine perspective which is even transcends the structure of the worlds, then there's absolutely no battle anymore, no milchama between the various forces in them, because they see it all as a singular expression of the divine, and there's absolutely not even a differentiation between the 2. All of them are just seeing from a divine perspective. So that's where there's absolutely no milchama. Ukamashal evrei haguf, take a metaphor of a body. Shehem bischalkus leivarim pratim lefim mizgamot chunasa. The limbs of the body are divided into individual limbs according to their chemistry and makeup. The power of sight in the eye. This is a head, this is a foot. The body is completely fragmented on one level. There's so many different organs. But they unite. And they all become unified. And all the parts of the body obey the will of the person. So this mashal, that when the Ratzon Elyon gets revealed, there's achdus, there's no milchama, we see also by a person in the will of a person, the koyach haratzon of a person. We all know, when it comes to the body and the soul's faculties, each koyach is enclosed or manifested in a different limb. And that particular limb or organ is created in a way, it's designed in a way that it could become a vessel for that particular koyach. You cannot smell with your eyes, you cannot see with your nose, and you cannot run with your mouth. Just like every aver has its particular function, and the aspect of the brain. In the brain you have everything, you have the central nervous system. But every limb facilitates and brings out and lives out a particular ability that exists in the brain, which exists in the soul and is manifested in the brain. So therefore, the arm, this is the brilliance of biology, of physiology, of how the body is created, that every aver, literally every aver of all the 248 organs in the body are orchestrated, their chemistry is in a way that they could become facilitators of this particular function. And the brilliance of it is dazzling, nothing superfluous, nothing missing, exactly what it needs in order to be able to express a particular koyach, a particular function that ultimately exists in the soul but is manifested through this particular aver. So the kidney does its thing, and the pancreas does its thing, and the liver does its thing, and of course the heart does its thing, and the nose does its. Whether it's the outside avarim or the inside avarim. Then you have the power of will. The koyach of ratzon is not limited to any particular space in the body. A person decides he wants to go somewhere shopping, or he wants to go somewhere to meet somebody for an appointment. So because of this ratzon, his legs start moving, he starts walking, and he goes there. So which limb decided to walk? His legs decided to walk. So you'll say his brain. His brain decided to walk, wanted to walk, and therefore he walks. But it's something that it directly affects all the ivarim of the body. All the ivarim of the body are affected and reflected from that ratzon. They are affected by that ratzon. In other words, ratzon is not limited to a particular aver. You want something, so every organ of the body, a healthy body, obeys the ratzon of the person, obeys the will of the person. So it's not a koyach prati, it's not an individual koyach in a particular aver, whether the arm or the leg, but it's a koyach klali. It's a general koyach that defines all of the elements of the body and where they're all united. So he says, Kachal derech marshal, bizgalus ratzon elyon baruch hu kulam nichnasim tachas yad hakdusha beyichud gamra belishum period chas v'shalom. When the
brain was doing that,
yeah. So when the ratzon elyon gets revealed, everything goes under kedusha with complete unity, without any period. Just like in the guf, the whole guf, all the different evarim of the guf are all united beyichud gamra in the sense of that they are all committed to the ratzon of a person. That's the power of will. The power of a will is the ein lecha davar ha'omed b'fnei haratzon. Nothing stands in the way of will. When a person wants something, so ultimately all of the evarim respond because all of them are influenced by the power of the will. All of them surrender to the power of the will. And even if the person is not in the mood, in other words, it may be difficult for a particular limb, it may be difficult to move. I'm not in the mood of walking, I'm not in the mood of exercising, I'm not in the mood of running, I'm not in the mood of meeting you. But the power of ratzon is, it transcends. And that's why it's a mashal for soivev kol alman. Looks like we have mamali and soivev. Mamali, the mashal is the relationship between the power of the soul to that organ. So every organ, every limb has its own unique energy that is tailor-made for it. Koyach haratzon encompasses all the limbs of the body. If you're in the mood, if you want something, then your brain, your intellectualism will work better. You'll understand better. If you're interested in learning or reading, it'll work better. You're running, if you're interested in something, all the limbs will respond. If there's a ratzon, it affects literally every single koyach as part of it. Because on that level, they're really all all united. So when the Ratzon Elyon also gets revealed, now there's no Mulchama anymore. Everything is completely one Rishos. So that's what happens after Sfiras HaOmer gets Nizgala, the Ratzon Elyon, the Seiv of Kalal. Says V'zeu Shekosov, that's where the Pasuk says in Parshas Re'eh, V'asisa Chag Shavuos L'Hashem Elokecha Misas Nidvas Yodcha Asher Titein V'lo Ksiv Nidvas Lipcha. That's why it says you should make a holiday of Shavuos to Hashem. And what do you give then? You give Nidvas Yodcha, the Nidava of your hand. V'lo Ksiv Nidvas Lipcha. Nidivus, generosity, is an emotion. So he's a generous person. It expresses itself in the hand, like everything expresses itself in the hand. But essentially, nidava, like you say, nidvas liboy hatar, it comes from the leiv, like we say by the Mishkan. Kol nidiv leiv yiviyah. But by Shavuos, the lashon is nidvas yadcha asher titer. Shenidvas haleiv hi murgeshes bargashas haleiv. Nidvas haleiv is felt in the hergish of the heart. V'yesh misha oyev. And there's always somebody who loves. V'adayin ein ze b'chinas bittul mamish. Even though it's a great midah, but nonetheless, it's still my heart, my emotion. There's still the I. V'adayin ein ze b'chinas bittul mamish. There's still no complete oneness. Ubegili ratzon elyon baruch hu b'chag HaShavuos. What's man matan Torah is saying when you have the gili of the ratzon elyon of Soiviv, mizgala ratzon shalamaylam and alev. What gets revealed is the ratzon that's higher than the heart. She'ein alev klei kibul liyas nitzvus amurgish b'soicha ratzon elyon. The leiv cannot be a klei kibul, a receptacle that can grasp and experience the higher will of Hashem. So that's why Shavuos, it doesn't say nidvas lipcha, because the chiddush of Shavuos was the gili of ratzon ha'elyon, where there's complete bittul. So therefore, even a pure heart is not a keli to experience it, because that is a yesh mishayev. Va'azay nikra nidvas hayat asher titin me'eleo me'atzma. So it's called nidvas yotcha. In other words, he gives to Hashem because it's his will. It's like the hand gives on its own. It's not just limited to his emotion. Like the hand that responds to the ratzon. Kasher yivarechecha Hashem alekecha. That's why the pasuk says, Kasher yivarechecha Hashem alekecha. The way it comes, brachas from the word hamshacha, the nisina is a result from the hamshacha of above. That's why the bread of Shavuos was chametz. Pesach, you're not allowed to have chametz. Shavuos, you had to have chametz. The 2 loaves of bread they burned in the Beis HaMikdash was from chametz. All menachas, the whole year, was only matzah. Lechem upon him was matzah. Only Shavuos, there was a mitzvah to bring dafke chametz. Ki chametz uloshen is nasos. Chametz is inflated dough. It's exalted. Ube Pesach, asura chametz shesh lo zeh yinikal klippus v'sitrach legavas v'gazas aruach. On Pesach, you're not allowed to have chametz because chametz nurtures the klipa, the sitra achera, which represents arrogance. So that's why chametz is asur on Pesach, because arrogance is the source of all negativity. All midas rois in a person come from arrogance. Arrogance means you don't know your place in this world. You don't know who you are. You don't know where you are. So that is what chametz is. So Shavuos, Mashenkin b'Shavuos. The natural midas have been refined, and they go up to be included in Kedusha. Then on the contrary, the hisnasus, the sense of exaltedness on Shavuos is holy. This is an exaltedness that is holy. It says to you Hashem is Gedula. So it's not arrogance. When you say Hashem's greatness, L'cha Hashem Agdula, V'agvura, V'atiferes, this is Kedusha. It's not any more negative. Yeshus. V'ein sham yenikal l'klipa v'sitra achar eklam. There's no nurture that goes to unholiness. Machmas gilu ratzon elyon baruch hu shalamayla mayla megeder ha'ishtalshalos. Because again, when this higher will of Hashem, Seiv of Kalam, and completely beyond the structure of creation gets revealed, so then there's no klippa, there's no sitra achara. Then the self, the sense of exaltedness is absolutely pure. It's absolutely holy. There's no yenika to sitra achara. So sometimes, in other words, there's 2 types of self-inflation. There's a self-inflation that's chametz on Pesach, that's forbidden, because that's a self-inflation that's actually not healthy for a person. It's where the person's arrogance can make him insane, can make him foolish. When an arrogant person, you can't listen to people, you can't be accountable, you can't say I'm sorry, you can't acknowledge mistakes, you can't learn anything new. You're overly self-conscious. You become completely obsessed with yourself. So therefore a person requires the lack of chametz on Pesach. Because if they are in that space and they're not going to challenge it, they will ultimately remain in prison their whole life. Shavuos is a different pchina. Shavuos dafke chametz. Why dafke chametz? Because after the avoid of Sfiras HaOmer, where the person refines the midas, and they reach Zman Matan Teresenu, which is Yiri Law, now the self is an expression of the divine self. If the self is an expression of the divine self, then on the contrary, the worth and the value of it is absolutely significant. It's the basis of Torah, that a person's value is non-negotiable, that a person's self-esteem, a person's esteem is infinite, a person's value is absolute, but it's not self-esteem as much as it's divine esteem, so to speak. We speak a lot about self-esteem. Really, the real self-esteem is divine esteem. A person is a chelik elikami mal. A person is a part of Hashem. So therefore, l'cha Hashem agdula, automatically, that means that the person is great. But why is the person great? The person is great not because he on his own is arrogant and he on his own is the master of the world. Somebody once said about somebody, he's a self-made man and he worships his creator. Right? So we're not talking about that situation. We're talking about a human being who's completely aligned with his source. Like the Eivarim who are committed to the one Ratzon. So all of the limbs become unified. So then there's no Sitra Acher, then there's no Klippa, then the self is an absolute vehicle and a conduit for the divine reality. So your chametz is like L'cha Hashem HaGdula. That's not a bad Gdula. It's not a Gdula that should be cut down. On the contrary, it's a Gdula that has to be embraced, that has to be elevated. So this is generally a klal, that whenever a person is, whenever Yiddishkeit is breaking a person, is crushing a person, and making the person feel valueless, then it's not Judaism. This cannot be emphasized enough times. If in the name of Judaism or religion somebody is being crushed, they come out of a conversation with their rabbi, Rosh Yeshiva, Mashgiach, or themselves, and they feel that I am worthless, I'm valueless, I'm insignificant, I'm a loser, everybody hates me, the world hates me, God hates me, certainly the people hate me, then we're teaching them something wrong. What we're trying to, that's the point. The chametz is the type of, you want to get rid of the type of arrogance that doesn't allow you to be able to realize your true esteem, your true value, your true significance. We want to get rid of the camouflaged arrogance that is eclipsing and covering up for the real sense of self-worth that comes from the fact that you are, so to speak, part of God. Like the limbs of the body, every limb is different, but nonetheless they're all unified by one Ratzon that integrates all of them and they're all part of it. And in that sense they're all one. All the Eivarim are one. There's actually no differentiation on the level of Ratzon. The level of Ratzon pervades all of the Eivarim in a uniform, in an identical fashion. But if it's crushing, if it's breaking somebody to the point that they feel that I am worthless, there's no I left, and they just despair, then there's something off. It's not Yiddishkeit, it's not Judaism. It's a very important idea. So even though there is the time when chametz is asur, because at that point, when you're trying to leave Mitzrayim, yes, you have to know the pitfalls of this exaggerated self-importance where you're not allowing yourself to see clearly your limitations or your addictions or your Mitzrayim, your gullus. In order to get out of it, you have to be able to flatten the bread, which is really complete vulnerability, complete exposure, complete honesty. You cannot be arrogant anymore. But ultimately, the kavanah is that a person should find the self and see it as being aligned with L'cha Hashem Agdula V'Gvura, and then fakert, Shavuos, you dafka have to have chametz. Because it's not your exaltedness, it's God's exaltedness that's being expressed through you. It's a different type of self-worth. It's a different type of self-worth. It's the ultimate self-worth, because God's self-worth is non-negotiable. It's true. And that worth is being expressed through me because I'm part of it.
If you're not following your roots, then why shouldn't you be crushed?
Why should somebody be crushed?
Why shouldn't they be if they're not doing the job?
Because what you want to crush is you want to crush that which is not really you. You want to get rid of that which attaches itself to you and claims that it's you. That you want to get rid of. That's like the chametz on Pesach that you want to get rid of. That's the ego that's taking you away from being yourself. But when you could really, really be in touch with your true self, then you don't want to take that away. On the contrary, you want to celebrate it. You want to accentuate it. So self-worth, right? Self-esteem. There's two types of self-esteem. There's a self-esteem that comes at the expense of others. And there's a self-esteem that actually creates more closeness with others. Bittul doesn't mean that I'm not important at all. Bittul means that you are so important. It's a very big difference. You understand the difference? In a good relationship, in a good marriage, right? What's bittul? Bittul doesn't mean I'm a shmat to do whatever you want. No, I'm worthless. I'm not important. Bittul just means I understand how important I am in a way that, as a result of that, you're also very important. You're also very important. That's what it means. So therefore, there's an alignment between the person's self and its source, the divine self. And then you want to celebrate your identity. You want to celebrate your character. You have to value it. Like Gemara says, Chayav Adam Loimar, B'shvili Nivra Olam. So is that arrogant? It could sound very arrogant. If you believe the whole world was created for you, that's pretty arrogant. Right? To walk into your office and say, by the way, you were created for me. You were created for me. Tell your wife, you were created for me. Tell your shviger, you were created for me. Good luck. So everyone was created for me. So the person has to be institutionalized. But Chazal say, Chayev Adam B'shvili Nivra Olam. This was delusional. What is it, delusional? The whole world was created for me. Of course, it could sound very arrogant and really very stupid. Like, wake up and get with the program because nobody believes it besides you. Right? They say, how do you drown a narcissist? You put mirrors on the bottom of the ocean. So he can't detach himself from himself. So you got to be able to get.
Pretty good.
You like that? Okay. You even know who it applies to, right? I see from your smile.
Somebody else besides myself.
Always that way. It's always somebody else. It's always somebody else. There's ignoring yourself and there's getting above yourself, and the two are very different. People drink or do other things because they want to forget themselves. Doesn't help. What we're talking here is about getting above yourself. Getting above yourself meaning that you do not see yourself in narrow terms. You get above yourself as a trap. In other words, you sublimate yourself to the place that yourself becomes far broader than you imagine, rather than a narrow self. So chametz on Pesach is basically limiting the self. It's making you closed up to reality. It's closing you up like a person who can't be criticized, a person you can't have a normal conversation with. They're very defensive. They always have to be right. So who's in prison? They're in prison. Because if you always have to be right and you could never be wrong, then there's no growth. Then you're a dead man walking. The Netziv says, Eseloi Ezer Kenegda. Right? We spoke about this. The Ezer comes from opposition. The greatest help that your wife can give you is by disagreeing with you. You don't have to repeat this. I mean, if you want, you could repeat it, but I wouldn't if I were you.
What did you learn this morning, honey?
That you should disagree with me. We're going away for Shabbos. No, okay, we're not. So, Esel Eliezer Keneged, what does this mean? It means a big person is open to opposition. Not because it's a mitzvah to oppose your spouse. There's no such a mitzvah. Maybe there is, I don't know. But the nekuda is that a person who cannot be criticized, there's no growth. You can't have conversations. You can't have a relationship. There's no give and take. So the arrogance puts me into a very small place. I'm very big because I'm very small. That's why I have to be so big. But when you're really very big, then you could be small. because smallness doesn't take away from your bigness. Put it this way. I can't be vulnerable if I have to be perfect. If I have to be perfect, I can't be vulnerable. If I have to make believe I'm perfect, how can I be vulnerable? If I'm vulnerable, you may think I'm not perfect, and that will destroy me. But what if my value comes from within? So then vulnerability won't destroy me. Then I could go over to you and say, come, I have to share something very vulnerable. And it's very embarrassing, so what's going to happen? So if my sense of existence is not coming because I truly exist, it's coming because I make believe I exist, because I show that I exist, because I have a beautiful mask that's very impressive. The moment you take a needle and you want to go within the mask, I get crazy. So that's why I always have to look good. I have to look good for everybody, because if I don't look good, it equals death. At least in my own mind, emotional death. So therefore, I could never be honest, not with others, and ultimately not with myself, and certainly not with God. So a person says davening is not working for him. Of course davening is not working for him. If somebody is not honest even to human beings, he thinks he could be honest to Hashem. Madach, you can open up to another person, and another person is a tangible person, and you still can't be open with them. You think suddenly by davening you can open up to God. It doesn't work that way. To the whole world I'm closed up. My wife doesn't know me. My friends nobody knows me. Suddenly by davening, I'm going to be honest. It doesn't work that way. It's ridiculous. It's delusional. But what about a person who has authentic value, meaning their Gdula comes from L'cha Hashem HaGdula. You're great, and that's why I'm great. That's a whole different type of greatness. That's a greatness that's non-negotiable. It's essential. It's not because I look good to you, therefore I'm great. This is because I'm connected to the divine. If I'm connected to the divine, now my vulnerability won't destroy it. What's going to be destroyed? That I made a mistake? Okay, I make a lot of mistakes. That I'm human? Of course I'm human. But there's an I that's connected to Hashem. It's a reflection of Hashem. It's part of Hashem. The neshama is a chelik elokami ma'al mamish. And even my animal soul is ultimately created by God. Soivav Kalalman doesn't differentiate. It encompasses everything. So therefore, I could be completely open. I could be real. I could be accountable. I could say, I'm sorry. I can be in a real relationship without the fear of constantly trying to show that I have a perfect image, because the lack of perfection will not destroy my core. Why won't it destroy my core? Because my core is essentially existing. Because it's essentially existing, so therefore, what's going to happen? So you'll find out that I am far, far from perfect. Okay, so now what? So now what? So now we can have a real relationship with my true self. There can be an authentic contact. But for this, you have to appreciate your true value that goes beyond your external value. Your typhus?
How do you apply Bishvili Nivra?
So what does Bishvili Nivra Olam mean? Bishvili Nivra Olam means that there's something in my life that the whole world needs. To put it in simple terms, a birthday, right? We appreciate says Chazal say, or Shalmi says about birthdays, Mazali Goiver. What's the concept of a birthday? You were born. What does it mean you were born? Well, born means it's the day that God basically said that my world will be impoverished without you. My world can be seriously enhanced and enriched through your existence. Somehow we need your existence. Why you? There's something in your life that the entire universe, on all of history and existence, needs. So that's why I could say Bishvili Nivra Olam. There's something I need to contribute to the conversation of history and of life that nobody before me or after me will be able to contribute. And the same is true with you and every individual. It's not because I am superior to other people and therefore I can denigrate, I can crush. It's not because of this fake grandeur that I possess. It's the genuine kedusha that every person expresses in their soul that nobody else has. It's a light that you express, just like the limbs of the body. Every limb has its unique function, and no limb can compensate ultimately for the other one. I mean, if there's no Breda, we try to do different things, but generally every Aver has its shlichus, its mission. So when you look at a person, this is what you see, and this is what a person has to see in themselves. They can't just look at their existence and say it doesn't matter this or that. No, but shvili nivra olam. For me, there's something that the whole world was created for. In other words, if I don't do what I have to do, the whole world is affected. Because this is something that only I could contribute to the kavana of existence. Bishvili nivra ha'olam. There's other nekudas that you have to do, and for that, bishvilcha nivra ha'olam. And without this, the whole world, so to speak, is not the same. With it, the world is transformed. And that's the meaning of existence from a Jewish perspective. The meaning of existence is that there's something at stake in your existence that is absolutely indispensable. Completely indispensable. Your typhus? I'll finish with a nice story. Very geschmack meise. It brings out the point very well. There was an Italian conductor. His name was Arturo Toscanini. He was a brilliant, brilliant man. Photographic memory. Brilliant in music and nuance. He died in 1959. He was a big Oyev Yisrael. It's a whole story, but it's not for now. He fought Hitler and Mussolini. He was a good man, Toscanini. A real Italian conductor, like Italian conductors. But the ganze is pashtos. So I read once that he had a biographer who was writing a biography about him. So he called him and he said, Toscanini, can I come over to you tonight to interview? He says, tonight I'm busy. He says, what are you doing? He says he used to conduct a symphony overseas and he gave it over to somebody. And through shortwave radio, they had that shortwave radio, he's going to be able to hear it. So he wants to listen to the symphonies. He says, can I watch you listen to it's his symphony? He says, yeah, but if you don't interrupt me, don't say anything because I have to concentrate. Fine. So the biographer comes and he listens. And Toscanini is listening very intently. At the end, the biographer tells him, wow, that was beautiful. He says, nah, it wasn't good. He says, what wasn't good? He says, it's a violin missing. There was a violinist who was supposed to play, he wasn't there. So he thought he's crazy. How did he know from listening over the radio? The next day he calls the conductor overseas and he asks him if everybody showed up last night. He says, actually there was supposed to be 15 violinists and only 14 showed up. So he goes back to Toscanini and he says, I don't understand. You're listening to a symphony over the radio. There are 150 instruments playing, including 14 violins. How in the world do you know that one violin was missing? So Toscanini tells him that's the difference between you and me. You're the audience, but I'm the creator of the music. So therefore, I knew that these notes require 15 violins. And when I heard that some notes were not met, they were not played, I knew that a violin was missing. So that's the difference. So in many ways, it's a very good mashal, I think, also for the Bishvili Nivra Ha'olam. In other words, from the audience's perspective, a violin is missing, a few notes are missing, who cares? Okay, next. It was a nice evening. But from the one who wrote the music, from the composer's point of view, and from the conductor's point of view, every note is indispensable. Something is off in the symphony. So Bishvili Nivra Ha'olam means the more you recognize your true value, the more you recognize how indispensable you are. And this is not a steer to humility, on the contrary. This comes from humility, and this increases humility. Because it's not about a self-value that makes believe I'm perfect, or a self-value that's based on a fake delusion that I'm something who I'm not. No, this is a self-value that comes on the contrary, from my complete oneness with my source, which means I can be perfectly humble and honest about my flaws and my mistakes and things that come because of different forces that exist in a person. So this was the key, the difference between Pesach and Shavuos, where Pesach chametz is aser and Shavuos fakert chametz is a chiyuv in the Beis Hamikdash. Shtei alachim has to be chametz, because with Torah, which represents the Gili of Ratzon Ha'alyin, the revelation of Hashem's will, there's absolutely no Rishus HaRabim, there's only a Rishus HaYachid. There's no room for fragmentation and separation. So then even the midah of Hisnasus, the quality of exaltedness, which at the time of Pesach could be seen as something that can have a negative impact, is completely seen as something holy on Shavuos without any room that something negative like gaiva, yeshus of klipa, unholy arrogance, narcissism will emerge from it. Because it depends basically where the self is. If the self is in a messy place, then you have to be very careful with that self, because it can lead you down dangerous paths. But if the self is in a very powerful and a good and a wholesome place, on the contrary, then that self is ought to be celebrated and ought to be embraced. So the question is, which self and where the self is, in what place. So there's a time in a person's life which would be Pesach. We speak here about Pesach and Shavuos. It's not just times in the calendar. It's mental spaces. That's the point. Pesach always exists, and Shavuos always exists, and Sfiras Omer always exists. That's the whole point here. The point here is that these moments in the calendar highlight certain ideas in Yiddishkeit, and in those times they're very much emphasized and accentuated. But the concepts exist. Pesach is a daily experience, like you said. It's Mitzrayim, Matan Torah, it's Sfiras Omer. It's all a daily process. It's just times in the calendar when we accentuate certain qualities and components of Yiddishkeit. I just think it's an important detail to emphasize. So the question really is where the self is. To give a simple example, I mentioned before addiction. Somebody who's full of negative habits and so forth, they know that they can't trust themselves. Because if they trust themselves, they're so manipulative to themselves and to others that the moment they trust themselves, they'll be completely in the dark. They have to be an open book. They have to be completely humble and vulnerable. Even a drop of chametz, a mashu of chametz, will destroy them. If an addict comes to a therapist or comes to a group and says, I'm going to be 99% honest, but one secret I'm going to keep, it's not going to work. Because it's not about how much percent. It's about the fact that you're not ready to break the shell. You're not ready ultimately to lay yourself bare. Beer as in B-A-R-E. Sorry for the Brooklyn accent. So you know what it means to lay yourself bare? Beer, B-A-R-E. Open, yeah? Very good. Everybody understands that word. In Yiddish, naked is naked. So if a person says, but no, I have a little chametz, a little, something I'm going to protect. That thing that I'm protecting, ultimately, it may be completely destructive and lethal. Because I know who I am. And when you know that, you have to be completely open, completely vulnerable. There can't be even a drop of chametz. There has to be complete matzah. And if there's even a mashu chametz, the whole thing becomes asur on Pesach. That's Pesach because a person is in Egypt and trying to get out of Egypt. And you're not going to get out of Egypt if you have even a drop of chametz in your life. Once there was this whole process of Sfiras Omer and this process of Shavuos, where the person actually comes into alignment with a deeper self, a person discovers a deeper self and a higher self. So it's not that the self essentially is evil and bad and horrible. Then the sense of hisnasus, the sense of exaltedness, is all part of a person's kedusha. It's part of a person being a part of Hashem and knowing that he has a mission of God, from God, and he's indispensable, and he's in a relationship with Hashem, and Hashem wants to express himself through him. So then the sense of hisnasus, the sense of what you might call inflation or self-importance, is not one that breeds narcissism, selfishness, arrogance, manipulation, abuse, lies, and so forth. On the contrary, it breeds empowerment and productivity and success and even more love.
And responsibility.
And responsibility, right. And responsibility, yes. Yeah. So that's the key difference. So he says, V'zehu tachlis nesinas ha-Torah li-Yisrael. And this is the ultimate objective of giving the Torah of the Jewish people, to the Jewish people. K'dei sheyiyeh gilui zeh shelamayla mayla me'ishtalshelos lamata b'bchinas v'seder ishtalshelos basic ha-Torah. The sikum, the summation of everything we explained is that the tachlis of the giving the Torah of the Jewish people is to give them the gift. And the gift is, in his words here, that it should have the gilui of l'mayla me'ishtalshelos in hishtalshelos. What does this mean? Matan Torah, Torah captures the Ein Sof itself, the energy of the Infinite One itself, but that which is beyond hishtalshelos. Hishtalshelos means the whole cosmic order, the whole cosmic structure. As he explained earlier, there's mamalik al alma. and then there is Soivav Kalaman, as explained at length, and Torah, Matan Torah. Torah represents that which is Soivav Kalaman, so it's Lamayla Meshlashlus, but it should be able to come in to Hishtashlus, meaning into the cosmic order, into the human soul, in an internalized way, B'bchinas Seder Hishtashlus, through learning Torah. And that's why the Torah is the prerequisite for the Yira, for the ultimate Yira, the Yira Ilah. V'zeh Vayedaber Elokim es kol hadvarim ha'ela. That's the meaning of the beginning of Aseres HaDibros. Hashem spoke all these words. Kidei leimer anochi Hashem Elokecha. The question in the beginning of the Maimer was, why does it say Vayedaber Elokim es kol hadvarim ha'ela leimer? It could have just said Vayedaber Elokim anochi Hashem Elokecha. We know that he's going to say all these words. You don't have to say Hashem spoke all these words and then tell me what all these words are. It just says Hashem. It always says Vayedaber Hashem el Moshe leimer. It doesn't say Vayedaber Hashem el Moshe. Everything that we're going to say now, Vayedaber Hashem el Moshe, and tell me what he said. Vayedaber Elokim es kol hadvarim ha'ela means Hashem spoke all the words, meaning the whole Torah. Torah Shabbat, Torah Shabbat, that generation, of future generations, Kidei leimer, that a Jew should be able to say Anochi Hashem Elokecha. The whole tachlis of Kol Advarim Ha'ela, the whole Torah, all the words of Torah is leimer, that a Jew should be able to reveal, should be able to say Anochi Hashem Elokecha. Ki Gilui Anochi, the revelation of Anochi, Hu Mehusei V'atzmusi, which is his essence, Shalomayla Mayla Megeder Ishtalshalus, which completely transcends the order of the cosmos, which is Anochi. Anochi doesn't even have a name. Anochi means I. What part of I? I is my essence, which transcends any limitation, any definition, any description. That is I. Liyos b'bchinas havaya lekecha mamish loydei haTorah. That Anochi should become yours. Anochi is I. Hashem is already a name. Elekecha is your God. The only name of Hashem that becomes relatable to people individually and changes is Hashem Elokim. No other name changes. Elokim is almost tailor-made. Elokim, Elekecha, right? Elekai, Elekechem. It becomes relatable individually to people because Elokim represents Midas HaTzimtzum, a Malik Halam, the divine energy that is custom-made to every soul. That's why it's a name that is, so to speak, it's a pliable name. That's probably a good word. It's pliable. It literally changes. You don't have that in other names. Yudke Vavke is Yudke Vavke. I don't care if it's talking about the plural or the individual. But Elikim, really, you have Elikim, which is the noun, and then you have Elikai, right? Elikeinu, our God, my God, your God, our God, their God, his God, Elikov, Elikecha, Elikechem, Elikeinu, etc. Because that's what it represents. So it's very different than Anochi. Anochi is I beyond names. In other words, that which you don't even have a name for because you can't describe. It's not relatable. Like we explained that a name is always that aspect of you which I define. In other words, the way I know you, that is your name. Like you say somebody has a good name. Somebody has a name, a reputation. A name generally represents you as you are grasped by people outside of you, including yourself. How I know myself. That's the name. The name itself, you have Shem Havaya and Shem Elikim. Shem Havaya is already a name that's transcendent. Shem Elikim is a name that is very custom-made. Anochi is beyond names. The Chiddush of Matan Torah is Kol Advarim Ha'ela Leimer, that by a Jew, there should be able to be the Leimer, the revelation of that Anochi should become a Lekecha. To be a relationship with Anochi, and that relationship should completely permeate you, and that happens through Limud Torah. That's what Torah does. The Gili of Matan Torah, Kol Advarim Ha'ela, allowed that every dibur of Torah should have this, that the Ein Sof Baruch Hu should be able to be a Lekecha by you. Like we say by Kriya Shema right after. These words, which are divrei Torah, is Anochi Mitzavcha. They connect. The Anochi Mitzavcha always means not only a commandment, but also from the word Tzavsa, which means a bond. Through these words, Anochi Mitzavcha, I connect to you. There's a tzavsa, there's a connection between Anochi and the person with your heart. But this gili, as we said in Torah, could sometimes be only mazli chazi, because it's so powerful that the higher part of the neshama, which learns the higher part of Torah, experiences it. In other words, I could learn Torah and completely not see any of this. Just like my neshama down here can't see any of it. But the mazel of my neshama experiences the mazel of Torah. So sometimes it's only on a level of mazel. The question is, how much am I in touch with my own mazel that I can even feel this year? That's why Chazal say you have to have together with Kriya Shema and with Torah, you have to have oil mitzvahs, which is Yirat Hatah. This is the second parish of Shema. You focus on mitzvahs. Because without the mitzvahs, there's no kiyum, there's no endurance to the amshach of Torah. Like we said before, without kiddushin, there can't be nisuyin. Without ha'isha niknis bekesef, there won't be biyah. The biyah won't be one that's significant halachically, because kiddushin has to happen through the tabas. Then there could be through nisuyin. Without kachena b'mitzvah you won't have a sein chalkena b'seira secha. For it to have a kiyum, there always has to be the framework, the commitment, the yirat hatah, the commitment to the relationship. And then there could be the yiri law. The yiri law is the absolute hisbatlos, the absolute oneness that I cannot even initiate through my own process. Rather, it always comes through something that enters into my space, not something that I initiate. And that is the absolute gift of Torah. So therefore, based on what we explained here, we understand why the Torah says by Shavuos, "V'asisachak Shavuos misas nidvas yotcha asher titen," not nidvas lipcha, because he says nidvas halev is the giving that comes from the feeling of your heart, that you feel in your heart generosity. Nidvas yotcha is the nesina that comes because of the revelation of God's will, and then the hand just gives on its own without toil and effort on your part, because there's a complete oneness with God's will. That's why on Shavuos chametz is used, because when you have that gilui, everything goes into the realm of kedusha, and that's Vayedaber Elokim is called Advarim El Leimer Anoichi Hashem Elokecha. That the tachlis, the objective of Matan Torah, is the hisgalus of Anoichi, which is beyond the shtalshlus, in a way that it becomes a lekecha, it becomes your God, and this happens through the learning of Torah, in which the Ein Sof dwells, through the introduction of Oil Mitzvahs. So now, based on this, if we now go back to the questions in the beginning, to the questions in the beginning of the Maimer, so we could here sum up the idea. In the beginning of the Maimer, the Balatanya asked the question. I hope you remember it. It was a while ago. It was before Shavuos we started. The beginning of the Maimer, he started Vayedaber Elokim es kol advarim ha'ela leimer, and he asked, "What's es kol advarim ha'ela?" It should have said Vayedaber Elokim anoichi. Right. So this is what he went back. What he went back to. That es kol advarim ha'ela refers to all elements of Torah. The whole Torah Shebiksav, but also Eila, the whole Torah Shebal Peh. It's all part of the Aseres HaDibros, and all of it is Vayedaber Elokim es kol advarim ha'ela. That's what it's kol advarim ha'ela. It refers to everything of Torah. Why is it said then? That was number one. Then he asked the question, why was the Torah given with such fanfare and such drama when the message of the Aseres HaDibros seems quite simple? At least a lot of it, like Sirtzach, like Sinaf, like Signav, is the basis of every civilization. So he starts saying that the tachlis of Nesinas HaTorah, there should be the gilui of Ein Sof, the Ein Sof, which is enclosed in Torah, and it should be access to a person in physicality. So Vayedaber Elokim es kol advarim ha'ela, in order there should be Anoichi Hashem Elokecha, that kol advarim ha'ela to be able to experience Anoichi Hashem Elokecha, that the Anoichi should become Hashem Elokecha, but the preparation for that has to happen through Sfiras Omer. In order to explain this, he started with a whole explanation of understanding the contrast between learning and mitzvahs in Yiddishkeit. On one hand, we say Talmud is Gadol Mimaisa. The Gemara says Talmud Gadol Shemevi L'dei Maisa. Not only that, the Gemara says in Mayit Katan that Kol Chafetzim L'Yishvu Ba, that no mitzvahs come close to Torah. Even Cheftei Shemayim, the Yerushalmi says in Peah, that all the mitzvahs together don't come even to one vart of Torah. Kol ha-mitzvahs einam kedai, even of davar echad medivrei Torah. So that's the contrast. On one hand, we say that all the mitzvahs don't come close to Torah. Yet Chazal say, Talmud Gadol, because mevi l'dei Maisa, because it brings to Maisa. In other words, the main thing is Maisa. That's what the Gemara says in Kiddush. So he says in Bavli there's a contradiction. The Gemara says in Mayit Katan that Kol chafetzim l'yishvu ba. So therefore, Torah is higher than all the mitzvahs. On the other hand, it says Kol chafetzecha l'yishvu ba. Only your chafetzim are not close to Torah, but Cheftei Shemayim are. So what's greater, Talmud Torah or mitzvah? So the Gemara answers, mitzvah she'ef she'lasas aydei acherim, a mitzvah that you could do through other people. you're not mevatel Talmud Torah. Torah is greater. All the mitzvahs are not kedai for one inyan of Torah. But if it's a mitzvah that you can do through somebody else, then you have to be mevatel Torah. So he says he doesn't understand. The whole concept of Torah is you're learning how to do the mitzvah. So how could you say that learning how to do the mitzvah is more significant than actually doing the mitzvah? I'm sitting and learning Masechta Truma, so I'm learning about the dinim of Truma, and now I could go and do the mitzvah. And I say, no, if I could send a shliach, you do it. I'm going to continue learning how to do it. It seems very funny. It's very strange. Learning how to do it is greater than actually doing it. The whole learning is you're learning how to do b'dikas chametz. All the halachas. No, you do it because I'm busy learning. Unless you have to do it because you can't do it through somebody else. It's a very strange thing. The whole tachlis of Likkutei Talmud Torah is to understand how to do it. So you have to say that there's something in Torah that is so powerful that all the mitzvahs don't come close to it, that if I could do the mitzvah through somebody else, I send them and I don't stop learning. So in order to understand this, he introduced the concept of imein chachma, ein yira, ein chachma, and the question is, with which one to begin? So from this, he went into the main big explanation of this mimer, that there's two energies that flow from the divine to all the worlds. One is called Mamalik Kalalman, and one is called Soiviv Kalalman, with the long explanation of the difference between Mamali and Soiviv, and how Soiviv Kalalman completely transcends the differentiations of the universe, where Mamalik Kalalman does. With all of the examples he gave every morning, we say, Atu Hashem Levadecha, that's Soiviv Kalalman. And then there's Ata Asisas Hashamayim Shmei Hashamayim Oretz V'chol Asher Alai Yamim V'ata Mechayes Kulav. There's you, God, alone, Levadecha Soiviv. And then there's Ata Mechayes Kulav in the differentiation of the universe, which relates what? Which relates to Memale, which relates to Memale Kalam. So these are the two modalities. Two modalities in which one can experience the divine. And even though Soiviv Kalalman is beyond experience, nonetheless there's the concept of Mazlayu Chazi, the source, the unconscious source of the soul, which can experience things that we don't experience consciously, and it only trickles down to us, down here, and that's the yira that needs Torah first. Imein chachma ein yira. Without Torah, you'll never reach that concept of yira. There's no way a person can reach that concept of yira. It only happens through Torah. But in order to have that, the person first has to have yira tata, which is relatable to mitzvahs, which is like kiddushin before nisuyin, kachenu mitzvaysecha v'sein chalkenu b'seiresecha. So Matan Torah experienced it. They experienced this higher yira. But there were no mitzvahs then, so he said then they had the concept of Sfiras HaOmer, which led them into the experience of Matan Torah, and therefore there's the concept that Jews by Matan Torah said Nasa v'Nishma, because they understood that for generations, the only way this can happen is by having first Nasa and then Nishma. So how does this at the end ultimately answer the question about the contrast between mitzvahs and Torah? On one hand, you say if it's a mitzvah that nobody else can do, then you have to do it. Mevatel Talmud Torah for the mitzvah. On the other hand, if it's a mitzvah that could be done through somebody else, you say that you're not Mevatel Talmud Torah for it. Because the tachlis of Torah is Vayitzavenu Hashem lasas es kol hachukah ba'ela liyira es Hashem alekecha, which is yira law, through the Ein Sof entering into a person's soul, and that can only happen through limud Torah, because imein chachma ein yira, the Ein Sof dwells in chachma. So therefore, if a mitzvah that you can do through somebody else, you have to do the mitzvah because imein yira ein chachma. If there's no yira tata, there won't be any chachma. And when a person is going to be mevatel the mitzvah, say they will not even be able to reach chachma because they don't have the yira tata. But nonetheless, there's an element where you say that all the mitzvahs don't come close to Torah. Not because if there's a mitzvah that nobody else will do, you don't do it. You have to do that mitzvah. But nonetheless, there's an element in which all the mitzvahs don't come close to Torah, because ultimately, Torah, which is a Reisa Mechachma Nafkas, captures within it the infinity, and because it captures within it the Soiv of Kalalman of Hashem, the infinity. So therefore, a Jew who learns Torah enters, so to speak, into the presence of the King himself, transcending all the worlds, transcending all the restrictions, transcending all the limitations. That's why Matan Torah was with such fanfare, with such rash. It wasn't just to tell the commandment of Lo Sirtzach. Matan Torah really was a gift that throughout all of history, throughout all the generations, when a Jew learns Torah, Kol advarim ha'ela, whatever you're learning, could be a halach and Shulchan Aruch, could be a Mishnah, Masechta Trumas, could be a shtickle Gemara, whatever it is, there should be able to be in Kol advarim ha'ela the experience that Anoichi, Hashem Elokecha, that which is Anoichi, the I, the deepest I, should be your God. Meaning your God means it becomes your energy that fills your space. That's the tachlis of the whole Torah. And in that sense, a mitzvah can't come close to Torah. That's why the Yerushalmi says in Pei that kol ha-mitzvahs ein kedai l'davar echem b'divrei Torah. So b'meila, if it's a mitzvah she'ef shelasas al yidei achedim, the Gemara says in Ma'id Katan, kol chafetzim lo yishvu ba. You're not mevatel it because here is the ultimate intimacy and experience with Hashem. So therefore we discussed at some point, how sometimes we look at Torah today, at least some people, it becomes like this label. A kid has a good IQ and he loves sitting in yeshiva and he's yeshiva for 10 years and he has a good head and he's not so into the social life and he's great with the books and it's wonderful and you have another boy who may be far more sensitive and far more refined, but doesn't maybe have the same, IQ and the same ability to learn. And somehow this person is deemed greater than the other person. A lot of people look at this and it doesn't always seem fair or just because, you were given certain gifts. You have a certain, learning takes a certain type of head to be matzliach in learning, at least on the level that we call learning today, in limited environment. But some people take that environment very seriously. So it seems a little like, unfair and unjust. How does this work? But I think here we understand that the whole concept of Torah is to be understood differently. The real experience of Torah is actually bittul. It's complete oneness with God. It's the ultimate of a spiritual experience. It's the highest level of refinement because it's not even the yira that you can achieve through your own. It's the yira law when you come into the presence of the King. And it's that which overwhelms you from outside of you. It's not even something you initiate on your own. And the value here doesn't have to do with how much you know. I mean, a person knows it's a gewaldige thing. But the value here of Torah is one that is very individualized in the sense that it's not about a competition between how much you manage to cover in a day or an hour or a week. But it's really about a relationship with Hashem that exists in Torah. So therefore, every person, lefum shura delay, what they're learning, one person maybe learns 5 lines, another person learns a blot, another person learns 7 blot, another person covers a tremendous amount of ground, another person goes deeper, another person is more superficial, another person masters huge amounts, other people can't. But the focus is not if there's a parameter, and if you know this, you're considered great, and if you don't know this, you're considered, I don't want to say a loser, but maybe that's the right word. You're considered not great. It's really not about that. It's completely about the relationship with Hashem that is a gift that a Jew can experience through limud HaTorah. Any Jew in any situation, when he learns Torah, has this.
What is the difference when it's Yev Shalas and Benechai?
Because Torah itself has a tremendous thing that mitzvahs don't have. But if somebody's not going to do the mitzvah, so you mean Yira ein Chachma. It's like you don't go to Nisuyim without Kiddushin. So therefore, there has to be the mitzvah. Because the mitzvah is the framework of the relationship. The commitment to the relationship. Saim Tasam Malach HaMelech. You don't jump to Yirei Law before Yirei Tata. There was once a Shvuazdik Fabrengen, the Lubavitcher Rebbe was talking about learning. So he said a beautiful mashal what Torah means, what learning Torah means. Very, very, very moving mashal. He said that you have a child who's home all day, a little baby, and the father is away all day at work. And the father comes home in the evening and walks into the house. So he says a baby, a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old, 1-year-old sees Tati. So what does the baby do? The baby excitingly screams and runs to the door and lifts up his or her hands to show Tati, pick me up. And the father picks up the child. The child just wants to remain there, until they feel that security and that sense of coziness and safety embraced by father. The same, of course, as with a mother who comes home. And they just embrace them, and you'll ask the child, so to speak, what's the purpose of this? What are you gaining from this? You're not getting a candy, you're not getting ice cream. But the child doesn't even understand the question. The tachlis is just to be in the bosom, embraced by my father. I haven't seen him a whole day, I missed him. Just to experience that intimacy, that is the most precious experience for the child. And everybody knows, anybody who has children, you come home to that experience, it's a very precious thing. And those of us who are still lucky to have children that age should cherish the experience, because it doesn't last forever. Because once they hit a certain age, they ain't hugging you when you come home in the evening. You should be happy if they look at you, and if you ask them a question and they answer you, it may even be a miracle, right? Some of you are in that stage of life. So when they're still 2 years old and they still look at you and they think you're God's gift to humanity, before they become teenagers and they know how undeveloped and primitive. Mark Twain once said, when I was 9, my father was a genius. When I was 19, he was a moron. Now I'm 29. I have a few of my own kids, and my father has some interesting wisdom and education. It's funny how much the old man learned in 10 years. So it's something to cherish. I'm just saying that derech Chagul, because sometimes people are waiting for their kids to grow up. There's something very valuable about the innocence of little children who think that dad is impeccable and flawless. And maybe dad is, they just need a few extra years to see it when they get married and have a few of their own kids. So the Lubavitcher Rebbe said that that's essentially the experience of a Jew also. He says a Yid is at work a whole day. He's stressed, he's overwhelmed, he's burdened, this problem, that challenge, even if it's b'tatzlacha job, but it's still a lot of stress. So he says, he comes home at night, what does a child do the first thing? Runs into the bosom of his father. Why? There's no why. He just wants to be embraced, and there's no embrace. He says, like the embrace in his father's bosom, there's no sense of comfort. He says, a Jew comes home, the natural, instinctive thing he does first is, he said in Yiddish, why is he taking a blood Gemara? Because he says in that way, he, so to speak, escapes and transcends all the stress of the world, and he flies into the loving embrace of his Father in heaven just to spend time with each other, because there's no intimacy like the intimacy of Torah. Now, we all know that a person could learn and not see that intimacy. You're just learning about, technical things. And some of you know how technical it can get. It can get very, very technical. But there's two things. First of all, that itself is Hashem's wisdom. That is the wisdom. So God is there in the wisdom. And the truth is that every element of Torah is many layers. So even that pshat is a reflection of very deep spiritual energy that's there. The question is, which level of Torah are you in contact with? And which level of your soul you're in contact with. But whichever level you're in contact with, the Torah down here that we have is that same Torah. As if I get more or less out of that, if I see more or less of that spiritual experience, it doesn't change the fact that it's that Torah. And even the most basic level of pshat is Chachmas Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's Hashem's wisdom. And in the neshama, how deeply I'm connected with my own soul. But the mazel of Torah and the mazel of the neshama experience the full intimacy. And a certain trickle of it comes down even into the human consciousness down here when a Jew learns Torah. So this has very little to do with IQ. This has very little to do with who's going to become the next gadol, who's not going to be the next gadol. This has very little to do with who graduates with honors and who goes on to this yeshiva or that yeshiva. That's all social stuff, social norms. Some of it are good, some of it are not so good, some of it are blessings, some of it are curses, etc. What we're talking here about is the experience of Torah in a very personalized, intimate, individual way, which relates to every single Jew in every single matzah. Have a wonderful day.
This class is brought to you by theyeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.